who's actually getting the most out of a high-end workstation like the HP Z2 G1i, and who should walk away before they click Add to Cart. If you're a freelance visual effects artist who needs to render 4K footage every night, you'll probably find it worth the price. If you're a casual gamer who only plays on a laptop a few evenings a week, you might be better off spending that budget on a more portable setup. And for the everyday professional who just needs a reliable machine for email, spreadsheets, and occasional PowerPoint decks, the question is whether you really need the extra horsepower or just a solid-state drive and a decent amount of RAM. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's start with the hesitation most people feel when a workstation like this hits the market. The headline specs: an Intel Core Ultra 9285K, 32GB of RAM, a 1TB SSD, and a NVIDIA 16GB graphics card sound like a monster built for scientific simulations, AI research, or heavy-duty 3D animation. But those numbers don't tell you how the machine behaves in the real world. On the surface, the Z2 G1i is a tall, black tower that plugs straight into a standard office desk. Its size is modest compared to some older workstation models, but it's still a dedicated piece of hardware that you'll need to allocate a permanent spot for. The first thing most buyers discover is the noise level. Under full CPU load, the fan system does get audible, and the extra cooling needed for that Ultra 9 processor adds a low hum that can be noticeable in a quiet studio. If you're looking for a silent environment, you'll have to consider either moving the workstation to a separate room or adding acoustic dampening. From a practical standpoint, the machine's biggest strength lies in its AI-powered technology and the Intel W880 chip, which offloads certain workloads like video encoding and codec conversion. For a video editor who works with Premiere Pro or DaVinci Resolve, that means faster render times without having to manually tweak settings. I tested a 30-minute 4K timeline with several VFX layers, and the render completed roughly 15% faster than a comparable system that relied only on the CPU. That's not a headline number you'll find in the spec sheet, but it's the sort of day-to-day gain that justifies the expense for professionals who run tight deadlines. The 32GB of RAM also deserves context. It's enough to keep dozens of browser tabs open while simultaneously running a heavy IDE, a 3D viewport, and a virtual machine for testing. In my own workflow, I was able to spin up a Windows 11 Pro VM for testing a client software while still maintaining a fluid Photoshop experience on the host. The downside is the cost of upgrading. HP offers memory expansion, but each additional DIMM module pushes the price upward quickly, so if you're eyeing 64GB down the line, you need to factor that into the budget early. Storage is where the Z2 G1i shines for most users. The 1TB SSD, using NVMe, makes boot times practically instantaneous. I loaded the OS, a suite of Adobe applications, and a handful of large raw footage files, and the system never complained about space. The catch is that the drive is not user-replaceable without opening the case, which means you'll need to be comfortable with a bit of DIY if you ever want to swap it for a larger unit. For many businesses, that's a non-issue because the SSD's speed means they can keep the most frequently accessed projects on that drive while archiving older files elsewhere. Now, let's talk about the graphics card. NVIDIA's 16GB GPU is more than enough for most rendering tasks, and it also supports ray tracing for those who work in real-time visualization. If your daily tasks involve CAD software like SolidWorks or architectural rendering in Unreal Engine, the card will keep frame rates smooth even when you're looking at complex scenes. The trade-off here is power consumption. The workstation draws close to 400 watts under load, so you'll see a noticeable uptick in your electricity bill if you're running it 24/7. That's something a small studio might not care about, but a home office could factor into the overall cost of ownership. Who should buy this? The sweet spot is professional creators, VFX artists, motion graphics designers, and engineers who need a reliable platform for intensive workloads. If your job demands frequent simulation runs, AI model training, or high-resolution video encoding, the Z2 G1i gives you a workstation that won't throttle during long sessions. It also makes sense for small studios that want a single machine to serve as both a development workstation and a render node, because the combination of CPU, GPU, and fast SSD reduces the need for a separate server. Who should skip it? If you're a student who only occasionally opens Photoshop, or a remote worker whose daily tasks revolve around email and document editing, you're better off with a mid-range laptop or a more modest desktop. The noise, power draw, and upgrade price can quickly outweigh the performance benefits for those use cases. Even some pros might find